Something massive is about to happen in Raising Kanan, and if the episode 6 trailer is hiding what I think it is, then we could be watching the beginning of the biggest story in the entire Power universe. For years, fans have waited for one moment more than any other, the moment Kanan finally crosses paths with Ghost. And after everything we saw in episode 5, it honestly feels like the writers are putting every single piece into place, from Breeze's growing influence over Kanan to the constant references to the past that longtime Power fans immediately recognized. It doesn't feel like a coincidence anymore. It feels like preparation. But here's the biggest question. Is episode 6 finally the episode where Kanan starts building the crew that will one day include Ghost and Tommy? Or are the writers setting up an even bigger surprise before the season ends? Let's break down every clue from the trailer, because there are some details that most fans completely missed. Before we talk about Ghost, we have to understand why episode 6 could become one of the most important episodes of the season. Episode 5 completely changed the balance of power. Every major character is now moving toward a confrontation that feels impossible to stop. Nobody trusts each other anymore, and every decision now has life or death consequences. That is exactly the kind of environment where legendary partnerships are born. The biggest change is Kanan himself. Earlier in the season, he was still learning how to survive. He made mistakes, acted emotionally, and often depended on other people to protect him. But after everything that has happened recently, that version of Kanan is disappearing. Every betrayal has made him colder. Every death has made him more dangerous. And now, instead of reacting to the people around him, Kanan is beginning to create his own future. That's a huge difference, because once Kanan starts thinking like a leader instead of a soldier, he naturally begins looking for people who can help him build something bigger. That brings us directly to Breeze. Episode 5 made it clear that Breeze isn't simply another criminal trying to make money. He's becoming the person who shapes Kanan's entire way of thinking. Instead of rushing into every fight, Breeze constantly looks at the bigger picture. He understands that winning one battle means nothing if you lose the entire war. Every conversation between him and Kanan feels like another lesson. Every move they make together strengthens their partnership even more. And that's exactly why longtime Power fans should be paying attention. We already know from the original Power series that Breeze played a major role in creating the future that eventually led to Ghost, Tommy, and Kanan becoming connected. For years, fans have imagined what those early days looked like. Now, Raising Kanan finally has the opportunity to show us how everything actually began. The interesting part is that episode 5 never rushed this development. Instead, the writers quietly planted small details throughout the episode. Breeze continues earning Kanan's trust. Kanan continues relying on Breeze's judgment. Together, they're becoming stronger every time someone challenges them. That slow development feels intentional, because when Ghost finally enters this world, he needs to join a crew that already has a clear structure. In other words, Ghost doesn't create the crew. The crew may already exist before Ghost ever walks through the door. That possibility completely changes how we should look at episode 6. When watching the trailer, one thing immediately stands out. The war isn't slowing down. If anything, it's becoming even more violent. Every side is losing people. Every victory comes with another sacrifice. The longer this conflict continues, the harder it becomes for Kanan and Breeze to keep fighting with the same small group of loyal soldiers. Think about it for a second. If you're building an organization during a dangerous street war, eventually you need new people. Not just random soldiers, but young men with intelligence, ambition, and the ability to learn quickly. That's exactly the kind of people Kanan would naturally start looking for. And that's where one theory becomes incredibly interesting. Instead of introducing Ghost through some dramatic action scene, what if the writers choose something much smarter? What if someone simply mentions a talented young dealer named James? Power has always enjoyed rewarding longtime fans with small references before making major reveals. Sometimes a single conversation becomes more important than an entire action sequence, because experienced viewers immediately understand what's being teased. Imagine someone telling Kanan about a young kid who's already earning respect on the streets despite his age. At first, it might sound like ordinary dialogue, but fans would instantly recognize the name: James, the boy who would eventually become Ghost. That kind of introduction wouldn't just excite the audience, it would perfectly fit the timeline while allowing the writers to slowly build anticipation instead of revealing everything at once. Another reason this feels possible is because the Power universe has always focused on legacy. Every generation creates the next one. We watched Ghost influence Tarek. Before that, Breeze influenced Ghost. And now we're watching Breeze influence Kanan. The story has always been about passing knowledge from one generation to the next. Episode 6 could quietly begin the next step in that chain. But here's something even more interesting. What if Ghost isn't the only familiar name that starts appearing? Because wherever Ghost goes, Tommy is never far behind. And if Episode 6 really starts introducing the future members of this legendary crew, then we may be much closer to Power origins than anyone expected. But if Kanan is finally ready to recruit the next generation, who will be the very first person to catch his attention?
If Episode 6 really is setting up Ghost's introduction, then the first thing we need to look at is Kanan's mindset. Because before Kanan can meet someone as important as Ghost, he has to become the kind of leader that people are willing to follow. And after everything that happened in Episode 5, I honestly think we're watching that transformation happen right in front of us. Throughout this season, Kanan has been driven by emotion. Every betrayal has made him angrier, and every loss has pushed him closer to revenge. But revenge alone doesn't build an empire, it only creates more enemies. That's where Breeze becomes so important. Every time Kanan is ready to rush into a dangerous situation, Breeze reminds him that patience is just as powerful as violence. He understands that the streets aren't controlled by the strongest person, they're controlled by the smartest one. That lesson could become even more important in Episode 6. The trailer makes it clear that the war is getting worse. Nobody is backing down anymore, and every side is preparing for another major move. Rock is still trying to protect everything she has built, while Marvin is more dangerous than ever after everything that's happened. At the same time, Kanan has completely stopped thinking like a son. He's thinking like an enemy. And that's exactly why the next few decisions he makes could define his future. Instead of reacting to every attack, Kanan may finally start thinking several steps ahead. If he wants to survive this war, simply defeating Rock won't be enough. Even if he wins, someone else will eventually challenge him. The streets are always looking for the next opportunity. Power never stays in one person's hands forever. Breeze already understands that. That's why I think Episode 6 could show Breeze encouraging Kanan to stop focusing only on today's battle and start preparing for tomorrow's empire. Because once this war is over, someone will have to control everything that's left behind. And why shouldn't that person be Kanan? One detail from Episode 5 keeps standing out to me. Every time Breeze speaks, he sounds less like a partner and more like a mentor. He isn't simply helping Kanan survive difficult situations anymore. He's shaping the way Kanan thinks. That's a huge difference, because the original Power series constantly reminded us that Kanan learned from people who came before him. Now we're finally seeing that process unfold. The interesting thing is that Kanan isn't rejecting Breeze's advice anymore. Earlier in the season, he often acted first and thought later, but now he's beginning to slow down. He's listening more carefully. He's watching how Breeze handles difficult situations. Every lesson is slowly turning Kanan into someone capable of leading his own organization. And every great organization needs talented people. That's why I think recruitment could quietly become one of the biggest themes of Episode 6. Not necessarily through a dramatic montage or an obvious announcement, but through conversations. The Power universe has always been excellent at planting seeds long before they grow into major storylines. A single name mentioned during a meeting can become one of the biggest moments of the entire season once fans realize what it means. Imagine Kanan asking if anyone knows young people who are hungry enough to work, smart enough to learn, and fearless enough to survive this world. That question alone could change everything, because somewhere in New York there are two teenagers who perfectly fit that description: James and Tommy. Now, I'm not saying they'll suddenly appear and be